All right, we're live. Welcome, everybody. This is Michael Globitz of the first response team of Hometown Real Estate. And tonight I'm joined by Chris Webb of SWBC Mortgage. We're just going to be talking to you for probably 15, 20, 30 minutes or so about building wealth with real estate. Both myself and Chris have known each other for over 20 years. We've been in the business for probably that long, if not longer. So I'm aging us a little bit. But a lot of times we get a lot of people that do come up to us on different scenarios for a loan officer or a realtor with different things about what they want to do with real estate. So we're going to touch today on the first-time home buyer a little bit, because everybody's got to be a first-time home buyer. You might have a kid that's a first-time home buyer, or you might just know somebody, a neighbor or a friend. We're also going to touch on people that are first-time investors. So a lot of people will buy that primary house. They'll think about buying an investment property, but they just never quite seem to put all the pieces together to get that first investment property. So we'll talk a little bit about the first investment property, maybe 2, 3, 4 more investment properties, different loan products that'll help you with that first primary house or that first investment property. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the exit strategies, where after years and years and years of investing in real estate, how that wealth can now turn into cash for you and your family. Maybe it's an inheritance, maybe it's a tax deferred way, or maybe it's a tax-free way, savings. My name is Michael Globitz with the first response team of Hometown Real Estate. I've been a professional firefighter for over 25 years, which makes no sense to say that I'm also a real estate investor. But right when I got my first job in public safety at 23, I bought my first house. My father was an investor in real estate and rental properties. My grandfather had rental properties, so I kind of had a little bit of knowledge right off the get-go. So bought my first house as a 23-year-old, fresh out of college. I won't say graduated, but I'll say out of college. And by the time I was 30, I think we had 3 rental properties, and we were on our second primary house and just building from there. After that, flipped a few houses, became a licensed settlement agent, a loan officer for a while, where I did not use Chris. Sorry, Chris, about that. Then went back to just going back to being more of a passive investor for a while. So that's where I'm coming from in this as a realtor with an experience of doing it. And we're going to show you some of the things I did. I do want to introduce Chris before we get started, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Webb. I'm a senior loan officer with SWBC Mortgage here in Columbia, Maryland. I've been in this industry full-time this will be my 24th year, 2024. I got into this industry in 2000, and this is all I've known for the last soon to be 24 years. And I'm excited about this, and thank you very much, Mike, for this opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah, we've worked together on a lot of deals. You've probably financed or refinanced multiple houses with me. And we've also, my wife, Stephanie, is my team leader / boss. So I know she's referred a lot of clients to you over the years as well. So anyway, let's just talk about that first-time home buyer or that first-time investor.
Mike, do we freeze? If everyone can hear me out there, why don't I jump in since Mike's computer is frozen? As a loan officer, what I like to do is help integrate the loan we choose into your overall long and short-term financial planning goals. So one of the strategies when buying your first home is cash preservation. How do we put the least amount of money down on a property and keeping the most money liquid in your bank? That's a lot of questions I've gotten over the years. Some lower down payment programs that the industry offers are for first-time home buyers are 3% down loans. There are different government programs out there where you don't have to put any money down, depending on your locality and the location of the house. There are VA loans for military folks that do not require any down payment. FHA only requires a 3.5% down payment. Those are just some brief lower down payment options for first-time home buyers that are very popular. In the state of Maryland, for those watching and listening in the state of Maryland, the state of Maryland has an awesome program called the Maryland Mortgage Program. Loan officers in the state use it all the time. It helps cover that 3.5%. that 3%, that down payment. It also helps cover the other side of buying property, which is closing costs. So in terms of different loan programs out there for the first time buyer considering your primary residence, this is a very good time of the year to consider buying for a multitude of reasons. But I always take the stance of the least amount of money down um, to make things simple. And Mike's back. Mike, I was just explaining all different lower down payment options for first-time home buyers, and we're so glad.
Keep going with your thought, or let me know if you're done with that. But that's exactly where I was headed with it. You put together your team, and then
Yeah.
you need to start, and you got to get that pre-approval. So you have any more to add to that now, or
Well,
one
yeah,
come back to you?
very good question. The pre-approval process. I was just telling everybody about different lower down payment options. There's also some cool options for that a lot of people don't know about. There are properties out there where only require $100 down. There are properties out there as first-time home buyers, and if you meet certain criteria, you only have to qualify for 50% of the house. So if the home is worth 300,000, you only have to qualify for 150,000, and your loan is 150,000. There's all sorts of programs out there. What Mike was just talking about, Mike and his lovely wife Stephanie are both professional real estate agents, and good real estate agents want to make sure, basically, before they go out and show you all the homes in the county and your locality that you're looking at, they want to be sure that you've been pre-approved by a lender. So the pre-approval process is just me reviewing an application, paying a lot of attention to your financials, income, assets, credit history, all that stuff, and about a 45-minute to an hour conversation, at least on the phone, or an hour or two in person. And from that is a pre-approval letter is generated for Mike.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And have we talked any about like buying that first primary house? If you're looking at maybe like the HUD programs, everybody hears about the HUD programs and the different loans that are available for them. And I know also I have a big first responder contingent in my audience, so a lot of times there's some programs for them as well.
Yes, HUD properties. Those I didn't get too granular in that, but those are the ones you have two options with HUD homes. What a HUD home is it's a Department of Housing and Urban Development foreclosure. These were properties that were owned by people with government loans, typically FHA loans, and they got foreclosed on. Well, HUD is not in the business to own real estate. They're in the business to insure mortgages. So they put out these cool programs to help move this inventory off their books. One is $100 down. You can qualify with $100 down payment. That's one available for HUD homes. But the cool one, I think, Mike, what you're talking about is qualifying at 50%. For certain HUD homes listed at 300 grand, you can qualify for 150,000 and your mortgage is based on 150,000. And if you meet certain criteria, you stay in that home for a minimum of 5 years, the other $150,000 is forgiven. You will never have to pay that back once you've crossed over a certain timeline. So those are two great products that a lot of people are not talking about in this market right now.
Yep. And they're probably a little bit harder to find those houses, but that doesn't mean they're not worth looking for and looking at, because that's a lot of wealth you've built with one purchase. Yes, you
Yeah.
have to stay there 5 years, but if you're buying a house for 50% its value, I think it's a Heroes Next Door program or something to that nature, first responder program. But if you're
Yep.
buying it for 50% off, you in that 5 years, you just built a lot of wealth that, again, we'll talk about a little bit more how you exit that wealth later on. So I think this kind of leads me to the whiteboard, Chris. I love my whiteboard. Yep. You've seen it this time. A lot of time on my short videos, I'll use the whiteboard quickly while I'm here, but I pre-wrote this one up. I'm going to slide my computer over. Hopefully it's not going to crash on me again like I lost my internet a second ago. If it does, you could just pick up the ball and talk about some more investor loans. Because, again, without the knowledge that you can do this, without a team of loan officers, handyman, contractors, and real estate agents, it is a lot to navigate by yourself. So it can be done, but you'll definitely want to put together some of this. So I'm going to slide over to my trusty whiteboard with my artistic skills and just see if we can get the rest of it in here now for tonight. It was lined up earlier. Let me just change my screens as well. I might kick Chris off of here and move him up a little bit, or just kick him off totally for now to make sure the whole thing comes in. There we go. Okay. So again, the name of this presentation is Building Wealth through investing in real estate. So everybody always starts most likely up at their primary house, number one. Um, Very few that I know invest in the investment property, number one, first, but it can be done. For whatever reason, maybe you're just still, not ready to live somewhere yourself. So you see a good investment property. But anyway, you got to start somewhere. You always start with number one, primary number one. That's where you can take care of that program Chris was talking about. You can take care of all the owner occupied houses. You can get the cheaper rates when it's owner occupied. Sometimes you can get better deals, less closing costs and everything. Whatever you're going to do, you start here at number one, always with primary. Usually what happens then is you got to save up some money or you got to build some equity in that house and get cash for that next purchase. Chris is going to talk in a few minutes about some different loans that when you're buying that investment property, you'll be able to take advantage of. But one of the best resources is a HELOC on that investment number one or primary number one, which for those that don't know, it's a home equity line of credit. It's where you're taking some of the value in cash out of that property to use that to buy property number two. So that could be your primary, your second primary if you want, or you could call it investment number two. Most people will end up buying, I like to say, keep primary number one as your first investment and turn it into first investment. And then primary number two is where you're going to buy that second property. So when you're going after this primary one, that's another note that I like to always make. A lot of people get a pre-approved these days for 500, 600,000. When I'm talking to somebody young, I'm saying, maybe buy that first property more like 300, 400, and think of it as your first investment property 2, 3, 4 years down the road when you're ready, as opposed to something where you're maxing out everything and you're struggling to pay and make that mortgage payment. So maybe buy primary number one as an investment number one just down the road. Once you get into primary number two and you have investment number one, now you need to start thinking, where's investment number two going to come from? You still have the HELOC, so you have a home equity line of credit that can come off of the investment or the primary, or maybe rates have come down and values have gone up and you can do a cash out refi to get that money. And there's also some private ways, family, friends, things like that. But again, you want to talk to that loan officer like Chris first and find out what you can use and where you can use that money for it. But there are ways to get the money. And then you're just basically saying, okay, now I have two properties. One's a primary, one's an investment, flip-flop them however you want. And now I'm just going to move on to number three. When you start to get about two or three investors in there, now you're adding cash flow. Because each property, the way I like to talk about with my investors or myself, I want to make probably about $400 a month over the rent. So I have money for a rainy day fund, for things to break, but it's also cash flow. And, three of those at $400 a month is $1,200 a month times 12 months, $14,400 a year, I think, if my math quick on the fly here is right. So that adds up. So a year or two of that, and it's adding up for you. And that cash flow can be used to buy the next one or start paying down the properties as you get there. So it's another added way to get money with that. And it's a good way to get money with that because other people are paying your mortgage down for you, and then you're getting the cash flow extra there. One of the things I want to stop real quick, primary 3 and 4, 5 and 6, it's the same thing. It's just over again. It's a shell game. You're going to move back and forth where you get the HELOC money from, where you pull money from out of. But one of the things that all this takes is don't worry about the interest rates when you're buying this investment property. Interest rates are interest rates. I don't care. They are what they are. As long as you can make rental cash flow to cover the mortgage and maybe like that $400 a month, I don't really care what the interest rate is. I never did. Because if you're waiting for the rates to come down, the price of the house is going to keep going up. Where's my hand going up? And you might price yourself out of that house. If you're waiting for the rates to go down and they never go down, you're never going to get in the game. So as long as I can buy an investment property at an interest rate that I can make that profit per month to cover, again, the air conditioner breaking, the new roof a year or two down the road, blah, blah, blah. That's where I'm going with that. So Chris, would you let me go off of the main screen and maybe talk a little bit about some of the investor loans other than just the down payments?
Absolutely. One of the things that came to mind, Mike, that was an awesome presentation. One of the things I want to stress here is once you get into the accumulation of investment properties, lenders will look at your application when we're looking at approving for an investment property purchase. And if you own a primary residence, we could offset the rental income by a lease agreement and by the appraiser telling us what the rent market is for that location. So my point is, one question I've gotten is, how on earth do I accumulate more properties if I could really only afford them from my job or my primary salary, my primary residence? What lenders allow you to do, and what everyone does, is we can offset the investment property mortgages with lease agreements, and that allows you to um, really start accumulating these things. How do you accumulate them? There are many different ways. Obviously, mortgages is the best way. There's going to be a minimum of a 20% down payment. There's a little bit slightly different guidelines for investment properties. Not much of a difference. The big one is the down payment. One of the biggest factors in this market now are professional investors or people that are self-employed who want to do this and don't have enough verified income, but have or own a primary residence. Our industry has a debt service, um, a debt service, a credit ratio loan. It's a DSCR loan. It's basically us looking at the debt on the mortgage and what the rental income is going to be. We are not going to look at the income from the borrower. These DSCR loans allow for you to be approved only by looking at the amount of the mortgage and the amount of rent you're going to get, and the approval is based on that solely. There's a minimum credit score of 620, and you have to own a primary residence to do that. But these are basically no verification income purchase mortgages for investment properties, and we approve the borrower just on the lease. It's great.
I like it. I like
Not
it.
a lot of people know about that one.
I wish those were around when I was accumulating my first couple of rentals back in the day. It was a little bit more of a struggle for that, but that's a great tool and a great product. And it's a great way. Again, the more of these you can get with that, the more wealth you're going to build 15, 20, 30 years down the line.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking at my list. Again, we're rifling through it. I'm going to go back to this high-tech board that I have right here. I did not touch on the in-betweens down the bottom here. So again, once you get 2, 3, 4 of them, then you can start maybe adding some flip houses in there. You can add some multifamilies if you want, and maybe, do some different things with real estate and really get it going, because that cash flow is really going to add up. And if you're using it, I think now what I want to do is kind of touch on, with a full disclosure, always, I'm your real estate trusted advisor. Chris is a trusted advisor with loans, but consult your tax trusted advisors and your CPAs and everything when I start talking about these exit strategies, because I'm not an accountant, but these are real estate laws. They're tax codes that are on the books, and they're handy. Chris, do you have anything else before I jump into some of those exits?
No. I'm ready for this one. That's perfect.
Yep.
It's good to.
Excellent. I'm definitely not going to be able to be in the picture with that one when I talk about these exit strategies, but I'll try to squeeze myself in there, but I'm just not going to do it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the exits now. So after 15, 20, like I said, 30 years, if you get a 30-year mortgage and you're ready to exit, how do you go ahead and make some money out of that? And a lot of people don't know about this first one here, the primary residence exemption of tax. So if you own your primary residence and it's your primary only house for 2 out of the last 5 years as your primary residence, if you sell it and you're single, you can claim up to $250,000 tax-free for any profit. And if you're married, you can claim up to $500,000 tax-free. So again, you can own other rental properties, you can own other businesses or whatever you want. But if it's your primary residence that you're living in 2 out of the last 5 years, that's a way to cash in on that wealth when you're exiting. So there are some people that are serial primary residence buyers. They buy one, they add value to it. Maybe they add decks and they add basement finishes and add bedrooms and bathrooms and additions, and they let the house appreciate in value. They sell it either for $250,000 or up to $500,000 tax-free money. Then they move on to another primary, and they'll do this every 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It just has to qualify and living in it out of 2 of the last 5. So you could even move out after 2 years, make this a rental, an investment property, go get in another primary, and as long as you sell it by the end of the 5, you can still claim that exemption. You just have to wait another 2 years before you can claim the next primary. Chris, you got anything to add on that from your experience? Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. That's great.
All right.
I know that.
Yeah, awesome. So investment properties is my second one here. And I apologize, I don't have my talking head on here, but I'm here. Anyway, so when you're selling investment properties, there's the tax code called the Starker 1031 Tax Deferred Exchange Code. Again, consult your tax pro. I'm going to put on the bottom here. I'm your trusted real estate consultant. Chris is your trusted loan consultant, but consult a tax pro while I'm talking about these codes. So the Starker 1031 Tax Deferred Exchange, what that means is if you have one of those investment properties and you sell it and you do it by the terms of the way Starker tax code from the IRS is written, and you get a bigger equal value or a higher value rental property, like kind property they call it, then any profit from property number one going into number two is tax deferred. So you won't make pay any tax on it. So again, if you have an investment property, you bought it for 300, it's now worth 500, and you roll it into a house that's 500 or more for another rental property, you will not pay tax on that 200 at that point in time, which is another way you can build that wealth as the values go up. Now, again, I'm talking usually 5, 10-year, 15-year spans for that value. It just depends on the real estate market. Nothing's usually going to go up in a year or two that quick, but we have seen it happen in the past. So the Starker is a good way to do that with multiples. So you can exit by taking all those rentals, maybe 2, 3, 4 that we talked about over here on this side of the board, which I'll just, exit property number 2, 3, or 4. If you take them all and buy one big investment property. So then you go buy, maybe you got rid of all your rentals and you buy that Ocean City waterfront $1 million house because all your rentals equal to $1 million or less. That's cool because you just deferred all that profit and tax. And then maybe you might want to consider moving into that as your primary residence for 2 out of the next 5 years after that. Talk to your tax consultant. I'm not a tax attorney, but maybe check with them and you might be able to do some things that are going to defer or, really lessen the burden of your taxes on all that wealth that you built over the years. That's kind of like a lot of people's end exit plan.
Great idea.
Yeah. Last one I got is inheritance and trusts. They always advise you to not put people in those investment properties' names on the property that you're going to give it to. It's better to inherit real estate than it is to have your name on it now because they get it at a stepped up basis. So again, maybe you have 3 kids and you have investment 1, 2, and 3 over here on the left side of the board. You want each kid to have one property once it's paid for, once you pass away at 99 years old. Well, when they inherit it, if that house that you bought for $200,000 is now worth $600,000 30 years later, which is usually the average, if you're taking about 3 to 5% appreciation over 30 years, they're going to inherit it at that $600,000 price point. So if they sold it for $600,000 next day, they shouldn't pay any taxes as long as you consult your tax pro first, just to confirm that. But that's the way I read the code, the way other real estate investors do it. So they use this building wealth to give the family when they pass away. It goes into trusts. Trusts avoid probate. You go ahead and save more money that way, and you keep more of that money that you built through all that real estate. So it kind of sums it up right there. It's not a simple, not a hard formula that I'm using with this board, just one board, and I'm going to come back to myself. But hopefully some of that made sense of different ways that you can build wealth with real estate. And I know Chris and I talked about this before. It's a quick overview today. It's something for everybody on the streaming services. But if you want to have a conversation with either one of us at any time, we're happy to one-on-one on Zoom, myself and Chris at the same time. Give us a call. I'll scroll his number, my number as he concludes here and I do. But that's it. You're basically going to use your leverage and your credit and a small down payment sometimes to start this ball rolling, then start using those same products with equity that you build and just repeat, rinse and repeat, and start building it. If you wait for rates to come down or wait for values to come down, you might not never get into games. So I always advise just jump in. As long as the numbers make sense, it'll make profit over the long haul. Chris, you got anything for closing for us?
Sure. I think the coolest thing you had mentioned here is that lower down payment. You just outlined a strategy where at the beginning I was talking about a 3% down payment. So on a $400,000 home, you just talked about a strategy to use $12,000, and a few years down the road, you're moving into your $1 million beachfront property. And you started with $12,000. So cash preservation is the number one thing that we're talking about here. Mike's whole outline is very little cash, using the benefits of real estate and the appreciation behind it to leverage that, borrow against it, and keep accumulating assets for you and your family. That's great.
I love it. It's a fun game. It's. I think I read something the other day. As I'm going to conclude here too, I think I read something the other day that if you look at millionaires across the U.S., they all invest in real estate. It's a way, again, but they're not investing all their dollars. It's these properties are almost like annuities. They're very similar to retirement accounts, except for the one major thing. A retirement account, you have to put almost every dollar in there to get it up there, and then again, it starts making interest and it does its thing. But with real estate, 3.5%, 5%, then you start getting up to those 20% for the investment properties. But even that 20% is going to get paid back by the cash flow from the property, and you're getting paid back, and then you just do it all over again. And those are ways that you can make tax-free or tax deferred, or maybe tax never paid. Again, consult your tax consultant on that. But there's ways that you can make money. I'm going to check the comments real quick and just see if we have any questions. This will be recorded, is recorded. We're going to send this out to everybody, and we'll make sure if anybody has any comments, questions in the future, we're happy to help. I don't have any here. So, Chris, I appreciate your time. I think some of those products are great for first-time home buyers. They're great for seasoned investors and first-time investors too. I appreciate you showing us some of those. And if anybody needs any help, reach out to us, and we're happy to help.
Have a great night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Have a great night, everybody. Thanks.